Blaster Master Zero. This is the second reboot to the original Blaster Master that released on the NES back in 1988. The first reboot was called Master Blaster Overdrive, which released on WiiWare back in 2010. Of course, since it only released on WiiWare, it didn't exactly gain much of a following and was quickly forgotten. Whereas the second go-around with Blaster Master Zero became successful enough to warrant 2 original sequels. Now, I've never played any of the original Blaster Master games that came before Zero, so I can't really comment on those too much. Of course, since Zero is essentially a reboot of an old-ass NES game, I think it's safe to say I'm playing the best version. I'm going to try to give a relatively quick plot summary, so if you're worried about spoilers in any way, you can just skip here. Blaster Master Zero's plot takes place in a distant future, on an Earth that has recovered from an ice age, caused by various wars and environmental disasters of the past. During the Ice Age, humanity was forced to live underground. When it finally came time for humanity to return to the surface, they used the various means and methods they learned underground to try and restore Earth to its original state. It wasn't long after humanity returned to the surface when a comet decided to crash down on Earth, though because the comet didn't impact any restoration efforts, it was largely ignored. Fast forward a few hundred years, where we meet our protagonist Jason Frudnick, a young genius in the field of robotics who stumbles upon a frog-like creature he names Fred. Though it isn't long after Jason finds Fred that trouble starts popping up. While Jason is doing research, Fred decides to make his escape through a wormhole that randomly appears. Jason ends up following his froggy friend through the wormhole, and he finds himself in the underground world humanity has abandoned so long ago when they return to the surface. Jason manages to find the strange tank called the Sophia 3, and decides to use it to trek the underground to find Fred and deal with these strange creatures that are inhabiting the underground facilities. It isn't long until Jason eventually stumbles upon this girl named Eve, who is the original pilot for the Sophia 3. Working together, Jason and Eve eventually find Fred. It isn't long after that Eve reveals that she and Fred come from a different planet, and that she was sent there to deal with a mutant threat that crash-landed on Earth from the comet a long time ago. There's 2 different endings depending on if you got all the upgrades and maps or not. If you didn't, it's treated as if you defeated all the mutants, and Eve decides to leave. Though she doesn't actually leave. She doesn't tell Jason that there's still some mutants left to deal with, and she decides to go handle it herself. She confronts the mutant core but doesn't have the necessary upgrades to be able to beat it, and she ends up blowing herself up to get rid of it. The true ending has Jason go after Eve after he learns that there's still a problem to deal with. Since Eve made off with the Sophia 3, Fred uses his wormhole powers to summon up another tank called the Sophia Zero to help out Jason. With a new tank in tow, Jason finds Eve and confronts the Sophia 3 after it has been taken over by a mutant. With the mutant core destroyed, Eve and Earth are officially saved, and the story of the first Blaster Master game comes to a close with Jason and Eve looking over the horizon on top of the Sophia Zero. Now on to the gameplay segments of Blaster Master Zero. There's 2 gameplay styles that you'll be switching to consistently throughout the game. The 2D Metroidvania-style platforming sections with the tank, and the top-down run-and-gun dungeon exploration segments with Jason. Tank gameplay is your typical fare of Metroidvania-style stuff. As you clear dungeons with Jason, you'll get access to more weapons and movement options for the tank so you can get to places that you normally wouldn't get to before, like some jet boosters or a wall climbing ability. The alternate main weapon options were kind of meh for me, but the only one I would consistently come back to is the one where you can be able to charge up a big explosive shell and unleash it on your enemies. Of course, at the cost of if you're too close to your own explosion, you'll hurt yourself. The tank has a variety of sub-weapons like homing missiles or warhead missiles, or the spark tackle which you can use to ram into your enemies. I mostly just use the homing missiles because it made it easier to hit certain enemies I couldn't reach with the tank otherwise. Now it's time to talk about the top-down segments with Jason. These segments appear a good chunk of time throughout the game, and it's also where you'll face 90% of the bosses. Jason comes equipped with a blaster rifle that has a variety of different modes, depending on the level it's currently at. If you get hit too much by enemies, the blaster's level will decrease, thus limiting your weapon options if you're playing too recklessly. And it does pay to play it safe, since at the highest level you get access to the wave option. This mode covers a wide area, goes far, and goes through walls, and it basically makes dealing with a lot of enemies a lot less of a bother. Wave also makes bosses feel like a bit of a cakewalk too. They you may think it's overpowered, I think the way it's handled is good enough to the point where it doesn't make it feel broken, because the only reason you're able to keep it is if you're not playing recklessly and you're not getting yourself hurt so much. Jason also has a few sub-weapons of his own, some explosives, a flash bomb, some turrets. Jason can even call in Sophia to lay down a barrage of fire on the enemies. There's a variety of different areas Jason goes through in his effort to find Fred and stop the mutants, from your standard forest or sewers to what seems like the insides of a giant mutant. My favorite area in particular was Area 5, the ocean area, mostly due to the Jason segments having a really nice aesthetic, and the music that plays in this area. After beating the main game, you unlock 2 new modes in the extras menu, Destroyer mode, which is a much tougher version of the regular campaign, and Boss Blaster mode, which is a boss rush. Then there's the EX character mode. This mode allows you to play through the main campaign as 4 different guest characters. The first 2 characters are Indie Crate's own, with Gunvolt and Ikaro. The next 2 are WayForward Shantae and Yacht Club's own Shovel Knight. While they all have their own unique tricks and gimmicks to get through the main campaign, there is one thing better they can do compared to Jason, and it's the fact that they can actually take a 5-foot drop without dying from it. Like, Jason must have shins made of glass or something, because he can't take a fall for crap. The main campaign will run you about 6 hours worth of playtime, 8 or 9 if you go for the true ending. Even after the main campaign, there's still a lot of extra content to keep yourself content with. There's hardly a time when the game isn't on sale, so I recommend giving it a shot if you can. And with that, that ends the video, so I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you have a good day and take care.